Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Powerless Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Maddie and Austin, who are two members of the indie pop, indie rock group Line out of Madison, Wisconsin area. We chat about their brand new EP that came out the day that this is being released, December 5th, called The Making Room. We talk about the group's culmination, how they got together, Maddie and Austin's very DIY approach to releasing this, Austin's trajectory as they kind of picked up the mantle of being a producer, and by and large the mixer for a lot of the release and kind of the learning curve they did there, and all the cool things that are related with that. We break down what the band's doing going forward, all that good stuff. It was absolutely great to catch up with and meet Maddie and Austin for the first time. Highly recommend this EP if you're into singer-songwriter stuff, indie pop, indie rock, just good music with great vocals, great production, and great songwriting. So again, The Making Room is out now. Make sure you check it out on all streaming platforms. I believe if you go to linesoundslike.com, if I have that wrong, you can check it in the notes. I'll have the actual links for their socials, as well as their website, where you can find the music, find their socials, purchase the album, CD form, as well as some merch that they have out as well. I picked it up myself because I enjoyed it that much after speaking with them. So again, check out Line's new EP, The Making Room, and I really hope you all enjoy the episode. Just as a reminder on my end, make sure you follow me on all socials at thepowerlesspod. Email me at thepowerlesspod@gmail.com if you want to be on the show, whether you're a producer, musician, artist, activist, journalist, political commentator. I've had all those and more on here before. Would love to have a culmination of music and political episodes going forward. We've had a lot of great episodes over the past several weeks, so make sure to check out the back catalog as well. Get in contact with me if you just want to tell me what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show, if you want to be on, all the good stuff. That'll be my real short pitch here for like a 2.5 minute intro, trying to keep these shorter because who cares about the intro? Let's get into the episode. So I'm here again with Maddie and Austin from the band Line out of Madison, Wisconsin area on the Powerless Podcast. Thanks so much. All right. We are live here. I am here for the next episode of the Powerless Podcast. I think this one's going to be like 78 or 79. Whenever I say the number, it's always wrong. But I'm here with Maddie and Austin of Line, which is, I say this every time, but you know, putting people anymore into like genres, a single genre is pretty annoying, right? But I would say, you know, like indie pop rock with a lot of other influences that like really make your sound unique, which you detailed really well in your press release. Thanks for sending that over as well. It helps contextualize everything and kind of know the background a little bit. So I'm happy to have you both on today. I know you're both kind of, I know that there's at least from your press release and things I've seen from the photos on your website and things like that, there's other people involved in the project. There's your drummer, there's someone that's at least from what I could see that also helps out with kind of the harmonies and the vocal aspect and a lot of other different facets. But it's fair to say that both of you are sort of the core of the band. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of hard to say. I'm happy to talk more about kind of how we formed as a band and like our, everyone who's made up the band, but yeah, I would say like our roles is that we definitely co-produced the EP, and so we spent like most of our time, once the recordings were done, we spent most of our time, just the two of us together, like working on getting it finalized, which was, yeah, the bulk of the hours put into it. So yeah.
And I think like it's interesting because before that, it never felt like it was like the two of us as like anchoring the band. It always just like felt like a band, playing Maddie's songs, but we were all in a band. And then all of a sudden, as we'll get into, we kind of like got thrown into this project that we took on. And I think it's shifted things, and that's been a fun evolution for us.
Yeah, that's what when I was reading through the press release after listening through the EP, which is fantastic, by the way, a couple of different times. I always love when I hear that I could probably kind of dive deep on the producing and like the kind of the mechanics of like what brings the music to light with people when they're kind of doing like the DIY approach to the production and the mixing and everything in between. Just because it's a fun like, not newer, because it's not like it's brand new. People have been doing this for a long time, but it's become so much more of the prominent way that people are releasing records and releasing singles or EPs or whatever, just because like we have the resources, right? Like that's what I do myself, like way less well than you do. This EP sounds fantastic. Doesn't sound, DIY used to have sort of the moniker of like raw, right? Like, and it doesn't mean that your music doesn't sound raw and authentic and genuine, but like it sounds like you went somewhere else and had someone else, professionally do the thing, and this is what came out, which is great. Yeah, it's great to see you, but it's very cool that people across genres that of people I've talked to recently, of just how hands-on people now, and like the new wave of up and coming artists, just how hands-on people are, not just with the writing and the lyrics and all that stuff that's like really important to people, but like the literal like soundscaping curation of the release. And I just love when I can break that down with people, not just like the lyrics and where the songs come from, but like, like I always say, like, I don't know if this is something that listeners love as much as I do, but I love being like, what plugins did you use? I'm very, very into that sort of thing.
Well, good. You're in the right spot then. This will be great for you at least.
Yeah.
No, and I think I've been told people enjoy that more than I maybe thought they would, which is good. It's good that people like the intricacies of all that kind of stuff. So, of course, what we're here, I keep burying the lead here. What we're here to talk about today is The Making Room from Line, which is coming out on December 5th, next week. It'll be on Bandcamp and all streaming services at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've already, you've done, I think you did at least from your press release and from following you on socials, I know you did a show in November, kind of promoting this release and all that good stuff. So I'm glad this is coming out. Sounds like from what I was able to read, and I will let you guys speak to this more than just me rambling here, of kind of everything that went into this record. 4 songs, about 20 minutes total with some change. Again, like, it seems extremely focused, extremely well thought out, and like I said, the product sounds great both from a songwriting perspective, production perspective, and lyrical perspective. So again, happy to have you all on. I really want to like dive deep on this, and we'll get into that. But what I've been doing again with artists to kind of break the ice, and this is actually where I found out about this project, was when I talked to Cat and the Hurricane a few weeks or a few months back. Time is a blur.
Cool.
Where they actually brought Line up and had me follow you. I talked about that you've done some things together, and that kind of in the same space in Madison. So I'll ask you the same question here for each of you. First, I'll go to Maddie and then Austin. Give me an artist you've been listening to a lot recently, maybe something that's inspired you, or just something that you've really enjoyed that you've heard a song or two from. It could be anything from the Beatles to like the most underground band from the Madison scene. But just tell me sort of what would be on your on repeat, or a band that you would like to shout out.
Wow. Okay. Well, I know
that was a lot. Sorry, okay. I ramble a lot.
I feel like I had like my mind went in like two directions, like two different tiers of like, I immediately thought of like who I've been playing a lot, which is the new Katie Gavin record from Muna. So Muna is a band that we really love, and it's cool that Katie Gavin went and did this side quest, like solo, a record that is, she's calling it Lilith Faircore, which I feel like is super accurate. Very kind of, if Muna is more like a indie pop, dark pop band, this solo record from her is more kind of like folk, singer-songwriter, like even delving into more kind of like a bluegrass feel. She pulls out her violin on this record, which I think a lot of people didn't even realize she plays. Fiddle, I should say, actually, is the correct term for this record. Anyway, I just think it's a great representation of like how songwriters can be versatile and to just follow where your inspiration is leading you. She's a great songwriter and can just write really well in lots of different genres. And so I look up to folks who can do that. Yeah, so that was immediately where my mind went. But I also like, maybe I'll let Austin answer, and then maybe we can also shout out some local bands because I also want to do that. But I was just like, well, that's the first thing that came to mind.
Well, that's a very good one to come to mind, because so one of the ways that I like listen to music is I buy tickets to shows, and then before the show I'm like, oh my god, I need to like listen to everything this person's ever put out. And that's like such a good way to do it, because you're like hyped for the show and all that. So we're gonna go see Katie Gavin in like 2 weeks down in Chicago. We're making like a little road trip out of it. So yeah. I'm also listening to that record a lot. This is actually perfect because we were listening to an album just while we were setting everything up. And I brought it over here because I wanted to look at the picture, but now I have it so I can show it to you. This is, I don't know if it's going to be the right direction, but it's Gordy, Gordi. And this is like an album from 2017 called Reservoir. And I love it so much. I love it so much. It's extremely good. It's very like, I think the music is, it's like singer-songwritery. It's very kind of cinematic. It feels really big and grand. There's a lot of like subtle looping going on and weird like soundscapey sorts of things. And like, I don't know, it's one of those ones that's just like lodged forever in my brain. So that's she's from Australia, so not local.
Yeah, I just saved that record. This is why I really do this. I say this every time. Yeah. I do this so I get out of my bubble and find the music that like artists say is inspiring them. And it's funny, Maddie, that you brought up Katie Gavin, because that's one that Cat and the Hurricane brought up when I had them on. And this record wasn't out yet, so I'd heard the singles. And so I listened to them, really liked it, saved them. And then, as things go with Spotify and all that, they don't send you the notifications when an album's out to remember, unless you've like pre-saved it and all those different things and followed on exponential numbers of social platforms. So now I need to remember, and I already saved this one, to listen to the full record. But the singles that I heard from Katie Gavin, I was like, wow, this is like so up my alley. Because again, like I said, like I feel like I always come off on the show that like I only listen to like beat down heavy music all the time, but like that's not true. I love, like, who doesn't like, or the the Gordy record you just talked about, who doesn't like good singer-songwriter music, or who doesn't like good like indie, like with Katie Gavin, who doesn't like a good like fiddle bit in a, like, that's just like universally good music,
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool. Maddie, did you see there was a local band you wanted to shout out or anything?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll say two things. Not local to here, but just thinking about someone who's, I guess what I should say is like someone underrated who I want to shout out and kind of lift up, who is I guess in some ways I would listen to her stuff like paired with like Katie Gavin, like in the same playlist realm. Which is Brittany Ann Tranbaugh, who we had the chance to play a show with. And actually Sadie Gustafson Zook. So they both, we played a show with both of them when they were on tour. And Sadie just released an album, and it's really fantastic. And yeah, so both of them are just wonderful singer-songwriters, like folk Americana leaning, a lot of like clever lyrics and queer lyrics and stuff. So just want to shout them out. And I also want to say big love back to Cat and the Hurricane, who also just released a record. And so thanks so much for shouting us out. And yeah, they're fantastic. And I love their music. I've really had Smoke by them on repeat. That one just has been resonating with me.
No fire, then why do I see smoke?
Yeah, it's been cool for me with that band to kind of like talk to them a little bit, because Benjamin and I, the one of the members of the band, their grandfather was the pastor of my church when I was a kid. So I've known Benjamin
I've been known Benjamin off and on. I don't know if they'd like that I mentioned that on here, but I've known Benjamin off and on. Like we went to like the same church camp. We went to, they were like a few years younger than me. But it's just funny to like see it all circle back around where they both are in, from the very conservative Christian background we both came from. That to see them now like have the same politics as I do, being like a very awesome like queer indie rock band and all this kind of stuff. It was like I'm like obviously like it was just cool to see that we both kind of had this like way different trajectory from where we both knew each other. So it was just really cool for me to see that record come out and like the Caffeine and Alcohol song that Ben wrote with that, as long as like Smoke and I could name off every single song on that record. It's so good. I don't mean to keep talking them up on the episode I'm doing with you, but it is just cool to see like this big musical space of, kind of grow in Madison specifically where you're all at, to just see like all these great, bands that have a lot of identity in the queer community and all that as well, like really kind of have a voice there, have a lot of inclusivity there, and also just have incredibly great songs coming out. It seems like every single time I'm hearing about a new band from the Madison area, it's just like, I don't know, something fantastic is coming out of there. So that's really cool to go from that. So thanks again for breaking that down. I do that almost solely for my own self-indulgence to find out about new artists.
Good.
But I'll put all those in the show notes for anybody that hears that, to hear those new albums as well. But I thought what we would do next is go into, before we talk about your new EP that's coming out December 5th, that we would talk about where this project started for you, for both of you. We've got both of you on here, so we could talk about how far back kind of music as a creative force came from for both of you, how you got together, how this project started, and just kind of go from there. So I guess like just tell me where not just Line, but where music became sort of like your, like the creative force for you, where you decided like, not only am I going to listen to music, be emphatic about artists, but I'm going to create my own. I guess I'll start with Maddie, and then Austin will have you speak after that, but go ahead and speak to that for me.
Sure. Wow. I'm going to try to, I feel like I always ramble on when I talk about this. So I
Go
feel
for
like
it. That's what the long form podcasts are for,
Yeah,
right? People do sound bites on social media. Let's get into it.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, I guess I'll just start with like creativity in general. I feel like, especially my both my grandmas on both sides were painters, and one of them was a dancer. They both wrote poetry, and they would paint together, like side by side, painting the same scene, which is extremely sweet and adorable.
That's awesome.
And so they both really encouraged me and my brother to do a lot of like just find creative outlets in lots of different ways when we were really young, and kind of like everything. A lot of my memories from my childhood were like being outside, exploring, like finding ways to kind of like find like have a lot of awe for like mundane things, which is I think really true for like most children, that you're like, you can look at like sticks on the ground, you can look at like ants in the crack in the sidewalk for like a long time, right, and be really fascinated. And I think so that's common for children. I think that's like our natural state when we come into the world, to have this like curiosity and like everything is new and amazing. And I feel like it's rare though to have adults that like kind of see the world that way as well, and are with you as a child and encouraging you to continue to see the world that way. So I think, I feel like that kind of like is very formative for me, and has been like just the most like positive like force and through line in my life, even through like hard times in my childhood and like adolescence and such. I feel like having just like seeing most things around me as like an opportunity for like inspiration or creativity, or like just kind of engaging with the world that way, because I was taught and encouraged to, has been really important. And so I loved like drawing as a kid, and then I started like writing stories, and I would sing to myself a little bit, but like not really like knowing how to use my voice. And then it's funny, I was just reflecting with one of my close friends from like elementary through high school, and she and I were big like Wicked fans. And so now that, Wicked, the movie is coming out, it's having this moment. And I was kind of reflecting like, wow, I think the way that I like learned really how to like belt was like trying to sing Wicked in the shower, because I had that CD and would just listen to that over and over again when I was like a middle schooler. And I was like, wow, like I want to sing like, you know, Idina Menzel someday. And it's like, that's not in the cards. But like, if you, see, like, it's almost like you can't even imagine that that's possible, and that that's even a direction that like your voice could go in until you hear it. So I feel like that was definitely like one of the ways that I started getting into singing more. I was lucky to have piano lessons when I was younger also. And so I feel like in some ways I got into songwriting a little bit by like, once I was singing to myself more, I would just like sing to myself walking to and from the bus stop to get to school. And just like, I feel like in adolescence, it's like big feelings start coming out, and it kind of became like songwriting became the way to process those feelings. And so I was able to kind of write songs mostly like just vocally walking or in the shower or whatever. But then I would like go to the piano and try to come up with an instrumental part. So that's kind of like how I got into songwriting. Yeah, maybe when I was like 13 or 14.
I feel like it is like sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but it is like it is like for so many people I've talked to, it's just something that can happen, I think, when you sort of have a creative mind or just like an aptitude for music, that it's not really like there's never like a moment where you're like, oh, like now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write my first song as a 13-year-old, right? It's just sort of like, I don't know, there's like this certain part of your brain, whether it's, listening to, songs from Wicked or you find an artist from various avenues or genres or whatever at the time that you get into as a young kid, that you just have this energy of like, I want to be that. I want to just like feel this flow through me in my own way. And then next thing you know, you're writing songs on the piano, right? Like, I think that's just kind of the mark that you're doing what you were meant to do from the get-go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. It is really true. I could not name like a moment when that started, like, because it really was going from just like, like humming to myself, like every human has the capability of doing, like people write little songs to themselves all the time, I think, and don't consider that to be something, but it only becomes something if you kind of like feed it more and then name it. And like, so it kind of was that. And like, this is gonna make me sound like such a like smart ass, which I was, but like in piano lessons I would want to like edit the songs. I'd be like, I don't know, I think it'd be better if it did this, and it's like, wow, that
should have gone up to the sixth instead of the fourth or whatever, yeah.
So pretentious, but like honestly, I feel like that was like, the songwriting energy trying to come forward. And so then I was like, oh, I don't need to like pick at other people's songs. I can just like make my own and then like play someone else's song and like appreciate it, or I can play a cover, and make it my own in that way. But I remember I was really self-conscious at the time. Like I would be like playing on the piano and singing stuff that I wrote, or actually even singing covers. And then the moment I heard like the doorknob turn or like the lock being unlocked of my parents coming home, I would like stop and like pretend that I was just playing like a
shuffle
song
some
that
papers.
I was supposed to be learning.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to like actually feel comfortable like playing, like singing, and like letting people know. I mean, just starting with even my own family, that I was like making my own stuff, because it's really vulnerable. But luckily my piano teacher, Tatanshi, she's based in the Madison area, so if anyone wants piano lessons, she's awesome. And I think it's actually really important for kids to have good music teachers, because that can really make or break it, like the difference of whether someone decides to keep having music as a big part of their life. So I just want to say Reem was great because she really encouraged me. She like, saw that I was writing my own stuff. And so then like we would, work on those songs and play like covers that I wanted to play, So I think I think piano teachers especially are known for being kind of like really strict and also like kind of having their own agenda of what they want you to play and very like classical based. And not that there's anything inherently wrong with that, but I just think a lot of kids want to do something different. So I will like get on my high horse like anytime to just talk about encouraging creativity for like youth, but really adults too. I think that it's like I just feel lucky to have had that encouraged for me. And so I think everyone deserves that.
I think it makes a big difference for people that like kind of like what you were saying, where you wanted to work on things the second you hear the door unlock or whatever, that you stop and go shuffle and pretend you're doing something else. Like, I think it gives that little boost of like, if you've got a good music teacher or instructor or whatever. I had that with guitar myself when I was younger, to where like it's like, no, you're good at this, and what do you want to learn, instead of like, here's this classical piano practice, for the umpteenth time, that's turning music into a chore for you, which it can be at times when you're learning things, but to like kind of foster that creativity at a young age, I think is super important for people, especially if they don't necessarily like innately have that confidence. I think that's huge for sure. Yeah. Before we get into you guys both coming together for this project and kind of going from that, Austin, on your end, where did music kind of really come from for a creative force for you?
It's interesting, like as you were talking about you were sort of like building your technical repertoire, but then like shying away from like the performance aspect of it. I feel like for me as a child, it was completely swapped, where I didn't think about this until like just now as you were talking. In like elementary school, I used to go up to my teachers and be like, I have a song to sing for the class. Like through up until like 5th grade, I was doing that. And it would be, they were songs that I wrote, but they were to the tunes of like church songs, because that's all I knew, because I also grew up in the church. And so I would sing a song that was about like what happened at recess, but it was like to the tune of like whatever, these 3 men of Orient are like.
Some like,
this is, I need to like sing this for the class. It's actually really important that I tell everybody that I fell down. So I had a really strong desire to perform, and then it took kind of the rest of my life to find things worth performing, and then meld those things together. But I think similar to you, Brandon, and when I have talked to Benjamin Rose about it in the past, like I grew up in the church, and that was like all of my musical exposure until like high school was the church or like playing trumpet at school. So it wasn't until like high school that a friend like burned me a CD that had AC/DC on it, and I think it had like AC/DC and Sandstorm by Darude, and I lost my mind. I was like, the human imagination has no limits. Like, if this is what we can do, my God, this is incredible. And I just like wore out my CD player on that one.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
That is so classic.
Yeah.
It is funny you bring that in. And sorry, I don't mean to cut you off again,
please.
but it is funny how many of us, regardless of like where we end up in life, that like, like for me, playing guitar or learning like leads, or like learning how to use a volume swell pedal with delay on it to make ambient sounds and all that all came from me playing lead guitar in a praise band at church. Right?
Yeah, totally.
And now I use that to make songs against the church, you know?
Yep.
Not just that, I'm just kind of being, but you know what I mean? Like, it is funny how much of it for us, regardless, like how many people, how often, regardless of where you go, that like that can be an avenue that it does, regardless of where you come from religiously afterwards.
Yeah.
Which all of it's, it's all fine in a certain context, but like that it can be a formative force for you for developing your sort of like music playing and at least being on a stage in front of other people. I just always find that interesting, regardless of where people are in their current lives, like where that kind of came from initially, you know?
A big source of it for me. And that does make sense. Like I'm happily not going to church, right now, or maybe in the foreseeable future, but there's part of me that does miss some of that like exposure to just like, I don't know, there's creativity. There's like a built-in community, intergenerational relationships, stuff like that. I have looked hard at it and it, I'm good, but I'm so also glad that I had that exposure. And that's like where I learned music too, is there was like this one ex-rocker who did too many drugs and then found God, and he was at our church growing up, and he like taught me to play bass so that he could play like Hammond organ and just like, go nuts after the service. And like, where I don't know where you get those relationships, outside of things like that. I'm sure there are places, but it's, I don't know, something special.
I think there's something to that unfortunately the bad parts of a lot of that can overshadow the things that, like, one thing that you do learn growing up in that like I at least I extrapolate from that. Maybe I learned it elsewhere, but I extrapolate from that from my own life is that sort of sense of wanting to find community and build like communal relationships with people, and kind of like, I think a lot of people, but I think you could do that outside of that, obviously, but I think for a lot of us, it is something that you can look back on and like, there is something to that. Benjamin and I have talked about this. We did an episode like a year and a half, 2 years ago now, that they and I like talked a lot about like how we kind of took those things and brought it to like our own, what we do now, of trying to like build a community, but build a community for like everybody.
Yes.
Actually
everybody. Yeah.
Actually everybody. But if I don't know that it's a weird thing to admit when like, you're like, I don't know if I hadn't grown up in that and pulled that stuff away from it, that I would have that same perspective now. And it's a weird thing to say in the context of everything going on in the world, but it's something positive to extrapolate from something that can otherwise be definitely, for a lot of valid things that you could say, problematic, right? But for the positive spin on it, for you, for music, like that's super formative and gets you where you are today, right, in some regards. All right, to go from that, kind of tell me where this project, where Line comes from, where you all got together, and where sort of the influences that kind of culminated in this project came from.
Totally. Okay, so Austin and I knew each other before, and like I grew up in Madison, but I went to college in Ohio and moved back to Madison in 2017. And around the same time, Austin moved back to Madison. And so we both were kind of back in Madison, but in like a new chapter of life, and like both seeking community and seeking like an outlet for art making, and like finding a lot of like just groundedness and like value in playing music together. And so I knew that, so I didn't study music in college, and I knew that I wanted to really like reprioritize music, or just prioritize it more than I ever had before. And I was just having this feeling of I didn't want to release music just under my given name. I kind of wanted it to be like a project. I didn't really know why, but I think like looking back on it, I feel like I just didn't want to feel like almost like maybe like the vulnerability, or like maybe just my own perception of like creative constraint of like making music under my name, and feeling like this pressure of like it has to represent me so fully and completely, when I really wanted to like be able to kind of experiment and see what comes of it. And so I initially like conceived of Line as like a solo project, and I was like doing some like working with a producer who's a really cool human on one of the songs that actually ended up making it onto like our first full band EP. But just kind of like experimenting with how I wanted the sound to go. And Line is the second half of my given name, Madeline, which I don't go by. And yeah, so it's just like,
isn't that so
this
cool?
like little alter ego.
How did I not
that.
realize that? How did I not? That's
Same.
awesome. That you,
It
yeah.
was like 2 years in when I realized that. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. And I like telling that story because it's fun, and it's fun to like have like a alter ego name, but it also, then I'm like, oh no, now I'm like telling everyone. So no one is allowed to refer to me as that. But now people know. And yeah, but then like Austin and I started playing some gigs together and like working on arrangements together. Then also we met Esther. I actually met her at the climbing gym, and Esther does vocals with us. And then like we were just becoming friends, and then I saw on her Instagram story she was posting videos of like herself like singing covers, and I was like, wait, you can sing? Like, do you want to sing with us? Like, we would really love to have your voice in our like little thing we're doing. So then we played. I don't even know. Did we play? Maybe we played a show together before Will, our former drummer, joined. So then it kind of just like, yeah, I guess like organically grew into something. And then it was about a year later, like summer, fall of 2018, that we like ended up recording this live video that is still on YouTube of a couple of our songs. And
so that's totally getting clipped in if I can find it to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can send it to you.
Okay, cool.
We look really different, all of us. Yes. And yeah, so that like we played that live video performance, and then we were asked about us and like our identity as a band, and we were kind of like, wait, are we a band? Like, we kind of funny. like the band ended up being like named as a band. Like we were like, yes, we're a band, I guess, from that project. I mean, what's your memory of that?
I mean, yeah, well, it was funny because the drummer who joined was a friend of mine from work and from rock climbing at the time. So we were like doing that stuff, and then I found out that he played drums, and I was like, oh, let's play a little bit. But he didn't like, he was nervous to like play anything too seriously because of, I think, just general, performance anxiety, and also like not wanting to like overcommit and things like that. And I was like, no, it's just like a couple friends. We'll just like play some music. Like you can play cajon or something like that. And then eventually it was like, okay, we'll get a drum kit involved. But we're all just like hanging out. And it was all very like, I don't know, just like, we're all in our 20s, we're doing a million things, also we're playing some music, and that's kind of fun too, or whatever. But it's all like super chill, low commitment, no pressure, everything. And then like we played this thing, and like there was like video cameras and people like microphoning us and stuff. And then they're like, so you're a band, you're all in a band. And I feel like me and Will that's the drummer, we're like, is now cool to commit? Do you want to like is that, are we good? This is it? This is like a thing?
Oh
like,
my gosh. And I was
official?
like, yes, we are. Like, yes.
And the rest of us were like, absolutely. Like at that point, it had grown organically enough that it like made sense. But it was actually important, I think, for both me and Will to like have it not be too serious to start off with. That it was truly just like for the joy of making music. It wasn't for some like supposed outcome or anything like that. And because of that, we were both able to be like, yeah, this is amazing. Let's jump in.
Well, that's fun too, and that's like authentic, right? Because one, getting a drummer without realizing you're in a band is a testament in and of itself.
It'll never
because
happen again.
as you all know, being in a scene, it's like if you can find a drummer that's not in 6 bands, you're good, right? So
it's never happened before. It'll never happen again.
Yeah.
So
truly.
So that's just so funny that you're like, but that's sort of like the flip of like how a lot of people are, where they're trying so hard to get a band together. They go through 12 people and then they finally do their first show, So that's funny, but that just shows that you were clearly doing something above all fun together, which like if you're not doing something enjoyable, why the hell are you doing it?
Truly.
So that's really, really cool. That's awesome that's how it starts. That's so funny, but also like that's very wholesome. That's sweet, you know?
It is so wholesome. Yeah,
is.
it's actually extremely cute. And like it's really, I think I'm really grateful that the collaborators who we've gotten to work with since then, like we've had really overwhelmingly positive experiences. We've had, a couple folks come in and like more temporarily play like drums, lead guitar, and backing vocals. And so I have a lot of appreciation for those folks. And then we like our kind of more current lineup that has been going on since Will moved away in 2022 has included Emily on drums and Charlie on lead guitar and banjo. And then also just myself and Esther and Austin still in the band. And so, yeah, I think just as it's grown over time, we've had, I think, a lot of like good fortune to like keep building connections with new collaborators and then being like, wow, now we're friends with these people. And, like it has like grown really nicely too, even if it's like with more structure than it was at the very beginning. Yeah.
Definitely more structure, but it's always, I think, because of the way we started or just because of sheer force of personality. Like we've always prioritized relationships, and like
which is good.
Also comes out of that.
I think that's an important thing for people to understand in music, is that like, music's an emotional thing. Music's a very like connection driven thing. As long as you're not writing some super robotic music, which you all are clearly not. If you don't have a good relationship with people, if you're just like, I've done this before personally, where you've picked like a really good person at their craft, but you don't get along together, well, then that just makes music miserable. And then the also, apart from your day-to-day, that makes the art suffer, right? So it's great that you've had like, again, from the get-go, of people literally being like, we didn't even think of this as a band, but here we go, like that's awesome. And also just keeps everything positive and wholesome, you know what I mean, in like the most genuine way. That's really, really cool. To go from there, I know that you had as you said, Maddie, I think you referenced that you put out your first EP as a full band. Was that 2020 when you were all together? Is that the one you're talking about?
It was,
right? But choosing
the
sides.
The most fated time to put out an EP, February 2020.
If it makes you feel any better, one of my friends that's in a full, like an international touring band, they put out a record that they had been building up for 6 months the day before lockdowns happened.
No way.
So like they're like
whole tour canceled.
But yeah. By the time they toured again, they already had another record out, and no one even really. You can see the streaming numbers. Nobody even like looked at the other one. So I understand it's not the best time to put out music, but the EP is fantastic. I really, really enjoy it. Choosing Sides that came out at that time.
You.
I guess from there coming to the most recent one that you're putting out now, The Making Room. So I won't make you break that one down. We could talk about a few of those songs if you would like, or kind of what you learned in that time. Was that one? I was again looking through your release where you talked about it a little bit. Was that one? That one wasn't as DIY for you all, was it? Or did you do that still all together, or what was the process there compared to now? I guess kind of comparing the two releases.
Yeah. Do you want to take
sure.
I
just find this stuff fun. I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like the same amount of DIY. We just did less overall, I think.
Well, but Dustin mixed that one, and then you mixed the new one.
Sure.
So that
yeah. Well, so we had, for the first one, we went into a studio called Blast House Studio, and we worked with recording engineer Dustin Sisson, who we really enjoyed our experience with. Like super a great, again, like this like relational aspect is so important. He's just like good at being there with you on the day when it's all coming up. I don't, like microphone placement, that's important, pressing record, all these things, those are important. And he was great to be with. So he recorded we did it all in one day, and then he mixed it for us, and that's pretty much what you hear is just like those steps. There's a little bit of back and forth, of course, with like the mixing and adding in a little bit of like found sounds and things like that, but the production of it was almost entirely just us working those songs out in live shows. So the instrumentation and all the voices and everything you hear in that is just stuff that we practiced. Essentially.
Yeah.
Maybe there's like a couple.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much that. It's like we like worked out arrangement through shows, through practicing. Like it was, very like live band sound. And then certainly like well engineered and well mixed. And so it sounds really like polished. But it like because of Dustin's work. But it was really like, just a live band sound, and like I would say more sparse is like how I would describe it in comparison to the making room because of that. So it's really like what you hear is what you get.
But the difference then when we went into the to record the making room is we kind of did approach that exactly the same way as it started. We had these songs, we had worked them out live, we had like whatever, the voicings and everything, how we wanted it, and then we just recorded that. And the plan was just to do essentially the same thing. Have Dustin mix it and boom, be done with it. And then we didn't do that.
And then we did not do that. Instead, actually I don't even know how to get into all of this. So maybe we can leave it at that, answering your question, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah. Well, one that makes a lot of sense from what, again, your press release said kind of that about that one, giving the energy of the live band. That makes a lot of sense, as you were essentially doing the recorded version, like the more polished version with good mixing and maybe, obviously better production value than you would get from like a live recording for that release. This one feels much different than that. This one feels very, like I said earlier, it feels like a lot went in, in a good way. A lot went into each song, both production wise, mixing, all the different sort of sounds you have, and the kind of pulling together of everything. So I guess like to start off here, we'll do a track by track here. Again, 4-track EP. So that's a pretty, it's there's a lot to get into with these, because I think there's a lot in these songs. It's, none of these songs are, and I mean this again in a good way, none of these songs are quick ones. I think if I remember right, they're all hovering around 5 minutes, right? So there's, which to me, I love that. I personally love, because it would be one thing if I, because I saw that after the fact, right? I listened through the whole thing a couple of times before I ever looked at before looking at my phone on Google Drive and seeing like how long the songs were. And I didn't realize they were that long, which is a good thing, right? Like some of my favorite bands, regardless of genre, have put out very, very lengthy songs, ones that would like be double that length or whatever. And at that point, it's a long song. But I mean, like, but I mean, I think there's something to, with each one of these, there's a lot of intentional, build up in some of them. There's a lot of intentional, like starting off. Is it no clarity that starts off basically a cappella and then goes full into it, right? I only asked that because I realized up until today I was listening to these with how I had set up Google Drive in alphabetical order and not in. So I was like, oh shoot, I need to make sure to switch it around. But and then it goes ebbs and flows into like the entire project, to where each one of these, like it pulls you in and keeps you there the whole time, which I think is a good feat. And it just shows that a good song is a good song, and it is a good song, and people shouldn't limit themselves to that sort of 2.5 minute to 3 minute marker that a lot of people set on sort of singer songwriter or pop songs anymore, with like how streaming things are, because I think that would take away from these. I think these songs need to be the exact length they are, and I think they're fantastic because you let them go there and didn't think, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's something that I overthink and think about a lot. So thank you for saying that, because I think, especially now, I feel like I've been noticing just on, listening on streaming, like songs are getting like shorter and shorter these days. And I think that's actually directly related to like attention span stuff, like TikToks and Reels. And like, yeah, so I feel like songs are trending shorter and shorter. And sometimes I'll see like a song that's kind of like not supposed to be like a interlude. It's supposed to be like an actual like main track that's like 1 minute and 30 seconds long. And I'm like, that's like really short. Like I'm gonna have to loop that like 3 times to get like my fill of it,
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of yeah. So I appreciate you saying that, because I definitely feel like I'm like, oh, I often write really long songs, and in an era where like songs are trending shorter and shorter, I'm kind of like, okay, I guess I'm just doing something different over here. But yeah.
And I think there's an ebb and flow of both things. I talked to a band recently where like they've gotten legitimately great at writing 1 minute and 40 second long songs.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's cool. Like I find that impressive in a different way that they can do that, because I can never fathom doing that. Right. But I think what you're saying, anyone that's listened to the show repeatedly that's gonna hear this again, they're gonna be like, he's saying this again. But like, I understand social media and content and all those things is sort of where music goes a lot of the time. But if the song isn't good, you might get a lot of clicks on some clip on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. But if the song isn't good, nobody's going to care. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, if you can make a 10 out of 10 1 minute and 40 second song, all the power to you. I don't think that's what what you're saying. I don't think that's what most people are doing. I think people are limiting themselves for the sake of what they think can reach people. And at the bottom line is like, you make the good songs and then people will come if you're pushing your band and you're doing shows and you're connecting with other bands and you know what I mean? Like as much as people want to go to that sort of clip oriented thing, I think the important thing is like, is the song good? All right, there we go. What do we do after?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I genuinely like. When I looked at the length of the songs, I genuinely appreciated that, actually, that it was like, you made the songs the way you wanted to make them and they sound fantastic, So before we get into these, because what I tend to do is I like to break the songs down one by one lyrically and like sort of the songwriting, like what the influences were there. But I know since you all put this together yourselves, a lot more on this than you did the previous one, and a lot more than I think a lot of other bands do in general. What was that process like? What were some, I don't know, what were some of the positives from it? Was there anything that made you lose some hair? Well, like, just kind of speak to kind of the development of it on sort of the production and mixing component. I know it sounded like Austin maybe handled a little bit more than that, but obviously you were both very involved overall in the production aspect of the music.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we should tell the story.
Yeah.
The story of what happened. I feel like I want, in terms of as we're talking about each song, I want Austin to be able to share more about the like details of the production and the more in the weeds stuff, because I think it's really fantastic and like they did a tremendous amount of work. But I feel like it is kind of a cool and just kind of, I guess, unusual or maybe just interesting story about like how this all kind of came to happen this way, which is that, so as Austin mentioned, we first decided to just record the 4 songs in a similar way to what we had done for our previous EP, with just kind of like, these are the instruments we play and these are the, parts that we have worked out and we're just going to play them. And then Austin and I decided we wanted to add in just more. I'm not sure how that decision actually came about, but I think just, at least for like from my perspective, like kind of hearing more in what the songs could be than what we had in those live band tracks. And I was getting into more like electronic music, like doing my own production and kind of like just having this frustration of like, I can hear something more, like I can hear like maybe like a little like piano note here, just as even a single note, or like kind of a richer like low end, different textures than like what we have here, or like, oh, maybe actually there's a little trumpet riff in my mind, or like maybe it's cello, no, it's actually trumpet. And then like just having a frustration of like hearing these things and not actually knowing how to like bring those to life. And so then we kind of just started adding things in. And at first in the process, we talked to Dustin and we were like, hey, so you know how we recorded those tracks? So we actually have some other things we want to put in. And he was like, okay, that's fine. You know, I have a band that I, you know, do that with, and they'll like build, you know, add more tracks, send me those tracks. Then we can mix the song, whatever. And like, yeah, so we were adding stuff in. We were doing it each separately, like kind of adding in our own parts. And then we would meet up together and then each like listen to each other's version. Like we'd be like, sit down at a table, like headphones on, like be like, okay, 3, 1, 2, yeah. And then press play on each other's versions and then like hear what each other did to the song. And sometimes it was like really different. So we were mostly doing this with the song Nowhere specifically. And it was like a very sweet, like innovative process that was extremely inefficient and also very like, I just feel like it's what we like needed to do to learn. Like it was kind of like it feels like the kind of situation where there's like no way out but through. It's like, okay, we're just going to try this way of doing things. Then we would kind of reconcile each other's versions and be like, okay, well, I had this in my version, but I didn't really like it. Like, what do you think we can do with that? And then it's kind of like, okay, like give each other feedback and then like kind of create a next version from there, having reconciled those. So we can get more into the weeds on like each song of like more about process and even Nowhere specifically, because it was kind of like the first one we were working on. And so therefore the one that we worked on the longest and like beat our heads against the wall most because of that. But yeah, I don't know. I want to get to the part where Dustin basically lovingly broke up with us.
Yes, but yeah, essentially we had been doing this and we were so excited about this, like this clumsy, inefficient process where we're like putting things together, changing it all, changing the whole song around, and then we'd be like, oh my gosh, Dustin, this is it, look at what we have. And he was like, whoa, okay, oh okay, so all right, let me mix that. And then he would mix it and show it to us and we're like, okay, yes, but what if we also added these things and took away that thing, and also could you fade that in, and this one we want it to sound different, too different. Do you understand what I mean? So we'd give him like pages and pages of notes, and he lovingly broke up with us. And it was like, it was not because he was unable or unwilling to do, you know, the mixing and the work. He mostly was like, you're doing this already, you're mixing this song, keep doing that, you're the best person to do this, I will take your money, but there's a better way to do it, and it should just be you two just do it.
That is before we get into it here and do the track, that's a cool way for you to kind of get thrown into being the mixing, you know, and production role, where someone's, you know, like you said, I'm sure Dustin was able to do all of it, but at the same time, when you're giving, I've always felt that way too. When I was in bands too, where like somebody gave such long notes, and you're so it's like you have it in mind. Just learn the little mechanics and the functions and things like that for a DAW, and you go do it. You know, like that's a cool thing for somebody to kind of be like, it seems like your vision might be better than what I can give you, even, right? Like
it was, you know, very sweet. It was also absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. It was like the kindest like mentorship move, and I can see that from Dustin, and I can see that in retrospect much more easily, that he was like, y'all are the right people to produce and mix this. You know, you're right, like you're already doing it. But when we got that like message from him, we called it like 11 p.m. and I had already cried. I was not doing okay, you know, like, because, right, it's like Dustin had this belief in us, but like we were still very much new at this, and it had also taken months already just working on Just Nowhere.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, oh my gosh, the EP is going to take like 4 more years to release if, you know, at this rate, right? Because it, like we had done so much work on Nowhere, and then ultimately we're kind of like, we need to kind of like, not like completely scrap this, but like we were like at a point, at a real breaking point with the song. And so it was kind of like, so we called, we talked, we went on a walk with Justin, we talked. He gave us a lot more confidence.
Yes.
And then honestly, it was really Austin like stepping up to be like, yeah, like I will like learn how to mix this. And that is just, yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm very grateful that it fell into place that way, of like, you were both interested and also like willing to do a very brave, vulnerable thing of being like, yeah, like this is going to be possible, and we're going to do this. And so it was really, yeah, because Austin just decided to learn those skills, which took many hours.
We've got 4 songs here. We've got, just to make sure I have the track listing right, because again, like I said, I was listening to it in alphabetical order for some dumb reason on my end. Show Me the Way, then No Clarity, then then Nowhere, then The In Between, right? I have the track listing correct on that, don't I?
No.
So
it is.
That's what I have on my list. Okay, sorry.
No, you're totally fine though. It's No Clarity, Nowhere, The In Between, Show Me the Way.
Okay, so I was listening to it in the correct way. I don't know what I was thinking. I was looking at the booklet spread out, and I thought I was listening to it wrong, and I was not. So
the
we're fine.
booklet is confusing because it's like a trifold thing, but
yeah, that makes
PDF,
sense when you see it in a PDF. Okay,
yeah.
So I should just have not overthought it. That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
okay.
Don't worry.
So it starts off with No Clarity, then, right?
Yep.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, just God. All right. I'm an amateur over here. Okay, but No Clarity. All right. So let's start off lyrically and songwriting. What's the inspiration for this song? And then we can kind of talk about any kind of production and mixing, either wonderful things that you had happen or frustrating nuggets and all that good stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so from like a songwriting and lyrics perspective, I wrote this one in 2014 when my grandma was diagnosed with lymphoma, and there was just a lot of unknowns at that time, and like uncertainty about like what her prognosis was and like what her treatment was going to be like and like how she would be able to withstand that. She ended up living for 7 years after her initial diagnosis. She went, in and out of lots of rounds of treatment. So she was actually able to live a lot longer than I think maybe we expected from that like first diagnosis, which is cool. But it was, just a hard time. And so the song really is about this feeling of like anticipating loss and like feeling that like on the horizon, but it's like not here yet, and like not really being sure like what to do with that or like how to hold that kind of grief. So like the metaphor of like in the lyrics, like yeah, I mean really it is this like this lack of clarity about the diagnosis, and also like the feeling of like it is this storm on the horizon looming from so far away, but like you can see it coming towards you. So that's kind of the imagery in the chorus. The imagery in the other sections of lyrics, like I was listening to a lot of Lady Lamb at the time, and she's one of my favorite songwriters and writes a lot of like dense lyrics with like really interesting wordplay that kind of like also goes back and forth between, is almost like stream of consciousness sometimes in terms of like switching metaphors, switching topics, and yet still has like a very like cohesive feel. I think maybe because it feels very like just authentic, like she's just writing with her full heart, full feelings. And so this is definitely a lot more structured than a lot of her songs that I was listening to at the time, but I think there still is this kind of like meandering sense of like the chord progression in the verses, and also kind of like how I'm saying what I'm trying to express, which is all kind of different variations on this same thing of like these feelings of like, oh, I should have called her more, I should have done these things, you know. But it's kind of like you just kind of you're where you're at now, you've received the news you received, like, and then you just have to go forward from there. There's no like, I don't know, right? You truly can't approach it any differently than just from where you're at. And so this kind of refrain of like putting one foot in front of the other and just like one step at a time truly was, yeah, just I think like a really helpful headspace for me to get into at the time of like I'm just going to take it like a day at a time, or like a, you know, few hours at a time. And yeah, like I think some of my favorite lyrics that I've actually ever written are in the third verse of this song, which is I'm talking about like the places that are like important in my life, like they, like when I've lived in the same place for a long time, or like just keep retracing the same routines and paths, like you kind of end up like surrounded by all the memories of the time that you have spent in that space, and all the people who have been there in the space with you, and then they come and go. So I just find that like keeps feeling relevant to me, like in all the different places that are meaningful to me in my life. And so I feel like even beyond like this song, I just yeah, find that like theme to feel really relevant and kind of like come up for me all the time, of almost feeling like surrounded by the ghosts of like memories and people, whether they're still alive or not. And yeah. Yeah, so I guess that's probably like all I really want to say about the lyrics and the songwriting. I think that like sums it up pretty well.
I was going to say it sums it up pretty great, and thanks for going into that. I know it's not an easy thing to write about, certainly not an easy thing to like, you know, dive into it, and after you kind of pour your heart out, like nitpick and you know, kind of get your cadence and kind of make the song. That third verse you're talking about, where the line here for, and again, maybe I'll throw this up on the recorded version for YouTube and stuff on the screen, but it says, and all these places look so different when you've seen when you've seen it all in them. In the end, we're all surrounded by the ones who came and went. Like that whole verse, like that's exactly, I felt like this was either about, you know, just sort of that feeling in general of being in the same place and things being so different, or grief and loss. So it conveys it very well, and yet still makes it like, you know, someone could hear this, be dealing with something else that kind of brings out those same emotions and pull a lot from it, which I think is like the needle you have to thread as a songwriter. Of you want to talk about a specific thing, because it also, not only is it cathartic for you, and also in remembrance, you know, and all those different things, and honoring someone else as you kind of talk through these things, but you're also finding a way to have it relate to somebody else that maybe hasn't gone through that exact same thing, but who hasn't felt that sort of thing, where, especially like you said, when you're in a community for a longer span of time, when you've lived in the same area for a longer span of time, and things change and people come and go, or whether it's a relationship or loss or whatever, like who hasn't kind of like, when you kind of feel present, which you were talking about at the very beginning of kind of, you know, it was grandparents you were talking about earlier too, at the very beginning, of kind of feeling more present. And, you know, like, you know, when you find yourself in those moments and realize how things have changed, but you're in the same location, like, I think that's one of the most universal things anybody can feel when you kind of get into like that, I don't want to throw out the mindfulness phrase, but you know what I mean? Like that sort of like introspective, or, you know, a perspective. I think that's really cool that you're able to make this flow in that way that it feels very particular to you, but also at the same time feels very like relatable. I think that's a really cool delivery, and like the songwriting and the melody of it really kind of impact it that way too. Like it all kind of comes in with that very somber, but not like explicitly like depressing. It's a very like, I don't know what the correct word is. That's why you're the lyricist, but but you get what I mean. It's kind of got that ebb and flow of those two different things, and it's really cool. This one stuck with me a lot when I listened through it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the production, mixing, and like the kind of instrumentation side of things, is there anything you can kind of state for this one as well?
Yeah. Yeah, this is, I think I will just say it for this one. This is one of my favorite songs. It's just like, it's so, I don't know. It's really good. It's introspective. It's thoughtful, and it feels like, I think the older I get, the more I'm like life is loss and life is grieving, and it's just like how well are you going to choose to do those things, because you have to do it over and over and over again. So a song being so explicitly about loss and grieving, but also telling you over and over again that like it's not easy. It's just not easy, and that's okay. Like it just is really powerful, and it feels really good to me. And when we got these stems back, when it was like, okay, go mix the songs, here you go, here's everything. I think like I was working with this one, and it just like the vocals just like weren't hitting for me. Like something about, maybe it was at the end of a 12-hour recording day, or like the way that we did it or something, they sounded fine. They didn't sound amazing, and so I wanted to re-record all of the vocals, which it's 3 different people doing a bunch of different things, kind of like a big daunting task. And I wasn't an experienced recording engineer, so we tried a couple times to get a date that would work to get everybody together. I had these big ideas about, we could record it outside, it would be really like powerful and amazing and like so meaningful. And we ended, it was getting like late in the year, so we kind of like had to move on it. So I just found, my sister lives like 2 blocks down, and she lives in a house with a big garage. So me, Maddie, and Esther set up in this garage, and we just re-recorded the vocals, but we did it all in the same room with our microphones being like this far apart, so we could hear each other really well. And I didn't have like a studio with ISO booths or anything. And I also think I kind of wanted that sound of us all bleeding into the same microphones and just being in the same room, like sacrificing some of the polish for a sense of cohesion. And so we just like banged it out in like 2.5 hours on like a Tuesday morning.
We had some time constraints for some reason that I can't remember. I think it was my bad, but yeah, it was like we really had like not much time.
So we did it. I like lit candles, and we're like, okay, we're all being very centered and doing our thing, and we re-recorded those vocals. And there were some, because we were all right next to each other with a ton of bleed and all of the microphones, there were some significant challenges with that. You don't get a lot of chances to tune your vocals when somebody else is singing at the same time as you.
Right.
So timing wise, it's kind of has to be one take on the big sections. So there was definitely some challenges there. A lot of headaches, a lot of pulling out hair, but I feel really good about where it landed, which is this like, it just feels a little more intimate, a little more raw. It's definitely not as polished as like the first version was, but it sounds like us singing, I think. And I think for this song in particular, that felt really important to me. And it was also good for our relationship as like producer and artist to be like,
yeah,
what is the definition of success here? Like how like what does good mean? Because we found out we have very different, not very different, but we have different enough definitions of that, where, you know, does something sound, or does something sound emotional, or does something sound clean, or does something sound, you know, like
good can mean a lot of things.
Good can mean
right.
a lot of things, and you end up having to uncover a lot of your like internal biases when you're listening to something with somebody, and you're like, you know, I'm like, Maddie, I love this part where like your voice cracks accidentally, you know?
Yeah, and I'm like, do we have a different take of that?
I'm like, whoa, wait.
You read my mind with what I was going to say in response to that. I was like, it's like when somebody goes in the vocal booth and has a little bit of a voice crack, and the producer's like, that's fantastic, and the person's like, what the fuck are you talking about? We're redoing it, you know? That's so funny. Yeah. That's it's funny. It's cool that you were able to figure out that ebb and flow, and also like, look at you with. Is this the first release that you did the primary like producing and mixing on ever?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
They learned how to mix,
like figuring out like
for this.
You doing like like look at you doing like the sort of like, you know, like the classic records that you hear about, like Queen or something, where the guy's like, you know, like we're in a warehouse, you all need to just like punch yourself and sing the note, you know, like it just like go for it and whatever have, you know, like all that kind of creative, you know, saying you all go in a room, you light the candles for the ambiance, you know, that's you found something you're good at. I think that's really cool.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I was gonna say, like, to their credit, right? It's like we're talking about how like they learned to mix basically like because of this situation that we got ourselves into, but like they also took it really seriously. And like Austin's also like an amazing musician and like an amazing listener to music, like I don't know how to say this. They listen really deeply to like other artists' music, and like also, I don't know, just like take in every part of it that they can. Like I feel like you do a really good job of that. Like it's not just about like I guess we both care about like process, and like we're nerds about that stuff. And so like in kind of a deep dive of doing a lot of learning about mixing philosophies, and like definitely like learning, because there's like so many different schools of thought around like good, like what's a good recording, and it's like, oh, is good because we were all in a room together and we lit candles and it sounds like we are real, you know, like maybe that's like what we want, you know. And so I think to their credit, like I feel like it's brave to come out and say like, hey, these vocals just are not like really hitting, like can we redo them? And it's like, yeah, they had been sounding sterile to me too, but like that felt way too scary and daunting to be like, can we like just redo it, you know? And so I think it was cool that you like, yeah, I don't know, just like made that happen. And also, yeah, just introducing these different ideas of like there's not one way to record something.
Yeah, I think that's super vital for, because there's a lot of really successful producers that haven't figured that out yet, that it's their way or the highway specifically, right? As opposed to what the song needs. And it's a great tidbit on how you figured that out. So that's awesome. Just to make sure, again, I know you just told, but just to make sure, the next song is Nowhere, right? I have that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure. Let's go ahead and get into Nowhere lyrically first, then we can kind of dive into things we just did there. So kind of speak to me here about inspirations, lyrical content, all the good stuff for Nowhere.
Yeah, this one I wrote a few years ago, and it was when like a friend of mine was going to move away in a couple months, and we were like spending time together that day and like sitting by a lake, like at a park, and just like, you know, having a quiet moment, like just looking at the lake and like just, you know, sitting there and having one of those moments where you're kind of like, yeah, it feels like mindfulness or something, or it feels like, oh wow, I'm really present in this moment right now. And then like having these feelings of like, oh wait, like this is so temporary, like not only this moment, but like this friendship being like as it is right now, and it feels so great right now with this person, like we live in the same town. And so like I wrote that song like maybe either like later that day or like the next day, and I wrote it all in one sitting, and I was feeling like really sad, it was just like I don't know. And I yeah, I'm trying to remember how I took the chords from a different song I had written, and just kind of played them in a different order and kind of came up with the guitar part from that. And yeah, it kind of just like ended up being this very like it's the same chords over and over throughout the entire song, and so it kind of has this like drone feel. And so yeah, I feel like I really like this song felt like it just made sense, and I think it's partially because it's like I wrote it kind of all in one sitting, and well, I wasn't sitting, I was taking a really long walk, but I wrote it in like one, like instance. And then like it felt like it really captured the exact feeling that I was having of like kind of this like it feels like a meditation to me, but it also like has this like ache in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it feels like it's continuing to try to return to the present moment while also like feeling my mind being like tugged away from that, um and knowing that like really beautiful moment is like temporary. So since then, like two of our bandmates have moved away in the fall, one of them in September and one in October. And the line in the song, which is not about either of these bandmates, says, "You're leaving town in October. I don't know how to ease my mind about it." And so now I'm like, screw this song. Like, it's a prophecy. Now I always am having friends move away in October.
Stop
so,
doing this to us.
Yeah, you're gonna have like sort of like mild PTSD pop up in your head for October time every time.
Yeah,
kind
every
of
fall
exactly.
we're trying to figure out like who's gonna be wrenched away from us now.
Yes, exactly. And we released it November 1st. It would have been awesome if it was released in like September or October, but in a way it's kind of, I mean,
it works though. It works in releasing in that context because it's like October's over and now you've left,
okay.
right? I think that works
perfect.
perfect.
They're gone and now you're thinking about
it. It's too late. Exactly.
I'm not going to speak too much on this one. Very universal feeling. I don't know that anyone that's gone on past their mid-20s hasn't experienced this in some fashion, to varying degrees, obviously. But that was the line I was going to bring up. Is it's again, you're putting in that specificity, which I think is good for music, and you're putting it in the context of a song that's like sort of got a universal, everybody can kind of connect, universal connectivity is, I guess, is what I was going to go with there. Really great song. It's hard for me to like out of 4 songs pick like a favorite on the record, but this one like stuck out to me as well in that same sort of fashion. I really enjoyed this one.
Thanks.
As far as the, is there any other sides for you, Austin, from the song that you'd want to speak to?
Yeah, I mean, we spent like 8 months and this was before we were like, you're actually gonna like be mixing it, like just like putting stuff in, taking stuff out, like figuring it out. So like the fact that it is a coherent song is like, it better have been by that time, but also it's a miracle. Like you can overwork something, and we came so close on this one, I think, to overworking it, and then had to like really put it aside for a while before coming back to it. So it has a lot of elements in it for as kind of as like, it's got a simple skeleton, but there are a lot of little drapings and things in there. So it's, I feel like it is not as dense of a song as some of the other ones that are on there, but it has a lot of the pieces that made it in there were very thoughtful about those. The drums in particular were a thing that we spent a long wrong time
my
on.
God.
The cymbals in the drum recordings were so hot and so sharp. It just like, it was so hard. Even Dustin, who like mixed this song, he was like, this one was really hard to mix.
Yeah. And there was one point where I was like, can we remove the cymbals? And Dustin was like, that's not
what we do.
He's
gonna
like,
be
he was like, nah.
thing.
He's like, we could, but nah. Like, we can EQ it out a little bit, but cymbals are everywhere.
And this is part of the thing of like, again, nothing against cymbals and actually nothing against Will's performance either. It's really I think it just opened us up to the fact that we were like, we had one thought when we started recording, and then we kind of were like changing our minds in real time. We were like producing it once we already had these tracks in place, as opposed to like starting like production more seriously like before we went into the studio. So I think it was just like a huge learning process of us kind of being like, oh wait, now we want something really different than what we thought we wanted or what we wanted before.
Which you
I
can
think
absolutely
you did a great
do
job with that.
But it just takes a lot of creativity, right? So for this one, you said that Dustin mixed this one. Did Dustin mix what's on the recording, or are you saying that Dustin did a mix and then you did something separate? I was just
Yeah. Good clarification. Dustin had done like several versions of this mix, and then when we took on the mixing, we decided we're gonna do a fresh mix of every song, and then we can go back and compare Dustin's mix and see if that's like something we want to go with. And I don't think we ever actually did that, which we should have done that, but
no, yeah, correct. So this mix is Austin's mix. But yeah, the Nowhere was the only one that we were working on for like 8 months in our kind of inefficient co-production process. And then that was what led us to the culmination of like Dustin being like, hey, so y'all should mix this. Yeah.
So I guess again, this is just me giving a kudos to you, is your first mixing gig was also with live drums that had harsh sounds and not what a lot of people do, which is like very, very nice, cleaned up plugins and a DAW. That's, man, you really knocked it out of the park for your first roundabout. Yeah, because I would have put my foot through the monitor is probably what I would have done. I'm just
listen,
kidding.
Long breaks and walks do wonders. This one was tough. Like, I mean, specifically to just like speak on that, in verse 2 there's no drums. That's not how we recorded it, and the drums were in every track there. So the fact that there's no drums there was very difficult to accomplish, because we decided it sounded good like without drums.
I didn't even realize how. But
the bleed was everywhere. The bleed was in the bass signal. The bleed was in some of the vocals. So it's like it was a lot of work, and I'm really glad that it kind of like turned out.
Well, now you can just record all the bands in Madison. You're good to go. You went through the fire. You know?
Yeah, seriously. Like, as a just shout out to Austin, like, you are like doing like
I am
recording.
So this quickly
and
kind of
others
you realize
projects.
It's something not only you want to do for your own project, but
no,
that you can do for other people. That's awesome.
By the time I gained the skills and gear needed to do all this, I was like, well, it'd be a waste to not do it. And I love it. It's great. It's great.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
Right below us, there is a basement where we practice. It's not fancy, but it's a fully equipped studio.
That's awesome.
And we've cut a couple demos there that sound really good. So we'll see what happens with it. But
I love that. That's absolutely awesome.
Yep.
Because again, you put yourself to the fire for your own music, and then you can help somebody else out after the fact.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I want to just like one more thing about this song I wanted to like shout out is that just all the kind of little like things hidden in it. Like, I feel like, so Austin actually played the trumpet parts in this song.
Nice.
Like, I originally programmed it. I programmed some trumpet part ideas with like MIDI trumpets and Austin as a trumpet player. And did I learn that you were a trumpet player from this process? Like, I don't even know if I knew that you played trumpet before. And Austin was like, these MIDI trumpets sound terrible. And nothing against like the parts that I had made, but just like,
no, the parts were good. We played
the tonation or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and so they like actually, yeah. I just think it's awesome.
It was, you know, it's kind of like a gentle meditative song, you know, a meditative song, and then all of a sudden it's like the trumpets are like, which is, you know, that's a starting point. And so I dug my trumpet out from whatever the 10 years of storage it had been in. And I was like, all right, we're gonna like see how this goes.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it worked okay. You know, they've got kind of a broken emotive quality.
We talked about this too. We talked about in the definition of like what is good. We were like, okay, like we both love like Sufjan Stevens, and Sufjan Stevens has like intentional broken trumpet qualities. Some of the horns, I'm like, is this a toy? You know, like, and I'm like, and I'm obsessed with this. So like, yeah.
So I put it down and I was like, all right, this is raw. This is, by some definitions, beautiful.
Yeah.
Even if it's not like concerto quality trumpet stuff.
But it's real.
It's good. I feel great about it.
Well, and again, you can't, you can get some great stuff out of plugins or samples or whatever the case. I'm never one of those purists. I think people that like go that way are kind of missing the forest for the trees. But if you can do it, you can kind of have that unique quality and still mix it in well. I think it's fantastic you actually played that. That's a cool little tidbit, you know.
Yeah, and I'm sure we could have spent the time to like figure out. Yeah, you could spend
several days on Splice or something trying to find the correct intone or some sort, you know.
And then run it through Lossy to get it to sound crackly.
Yeah.
And then, you know, do whatever.
Yeah. Fabricate the authenticity, or just play the trumpet. Yeah,
or just overdrive an SM57, and there we go. We're done.
There we go. Perfect. Again, fantastic song. We'll just drive right back into the EP, and I just want to make sure again, because
you're trying to.
I feel so bad. I listened to this. I feel so bad that I listened to this out of sequence.
My gosh, that's so funny. No one listens to things in order anymore. So.
Yeah, but for me, I like to, you know what I mean? Like, when I'm breaking things down, I want to like make sure I listen to the whole thing the way it stands, right? You put a lot of thought into it. The In Between is the next one, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure. And just because, again, I was listening to out of order, is this the one that has the more prominent like bass lines and fills and things like that, or was that? Yes. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so that would make sense because I was listening to it. And this starts with T, so it'd be at the bottom. Yeah. So this one I wanted to say first and foremost from the playing, the bass in this is fantastic. I thought it gave like a good driving point. The tone was really cool. It didn't overpower the overall essence of the song, but there's like little fills you'd add in for a transition or a little, you know what I mean? Like, or little licks that you had in there that I thought really made it have a lot more sort of like groove character, which was really cool. So that's my little takeaway from like just like the one little tidbit I wanted to make sure to throw in there because I thought that was like a really cool difference from the other three tracks, which are all really, you know, all the songs are great, but I just thought that was like a cool little highlight on this. But I digress. At the In Between, Maddie, if you want to start first lyrically, and we'll do the same spiel we just did, I'll stop, you know, rambling here.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one, yeah, I always introduce this one as that it's a song about sleep paralysis, and I guess I'll just describe because I don't know if you know what sleep paralysis is, but even if you don't know,
yes, sleep paralysis, at least to my knowledge, is like when you're talking about like when you wake up and you still have sort of the mechanisms that keep you sort of like in that sleep state to where you can't move, and some people can even have like hallucinations and all those different things. I have that right? That's what you're talking about, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, and thanks for summarizing it because I was realizing like even if you know what it is, listeners might not know. So yes, that's exactly what it is. And like I got it for the first time when I was a summer camp counselor when I was in high school, and I was like taking a nap in the middle of the day, like because I had some time off. And I was in my bunk bed in the tent, and like I I could actually see, like I could open my eyes, but I couldn't move. So I just saw like the top of the like top bunk above me and was just like, oh my God, what's happening to me? Because it's terrifying. Like, especially the first time, it continues to actually be terrifying because it's like, it took a while for me to actually like wake up because it was like I felt like my eyes were open and I don't actually know if they really were or if I just like knew generally where I was, but it's like the creepiest experience. And yeah, exactly like what you were saying. Sometimes people experience hallucinations. I've never experienced the like any like feeling of like a demon in the room, but some people will experience that, and that's even scarier. Like, geez. So yeah, some of our other bandmates have experienced it too. And just, it's such a weird phenomenon, but it was really like happening to me a lot for a period of time and like very stressful. And when I was writing this song, it kind of started morphing into something else too. And like, I kind of realized there's like the feeling of sleep paralysis is like being like trapped in your head, like you're anxious, you're overthinking, you're literally just like a head without a body in a way. It's like you can't move. And so it's like, to me it started to become this metaphor for like anxiety, which I also have, and just the experience of like overthinking or going in some sort of spiral where you just like feel like you can't get out of a certain headspace. And so the actual structure of the song itself kind of, I wanted it to like have the feeling of like the difference between like reality and then like the kind of like sleep paralysis state. And so all the lyrics are really like talking about this like fear of going into like either, sleep paralysis or like an anxiety spiral, like a panic attack, whatever it might be. But then there's actually like sections of the song after each chorus where it goes into this different chord progression and that's very like sparse and like eerie. And there's vocals from myself and Esther, but not like any lyrics. So that kind of was supposed to, yeah, just like give the feeling of the subject within the actual structure of the song itself. And in terms of inspiration, like I always like to, I guess similarly to what I said about No Clarity, I like to think about like who was I listening to at the time. And I feel like I was listening to a lot of The Big Moon, and I don't think that they necessarily like do things like that, but I feel like in the kind of, they have very like clever tongue-in-cheek lyrics and kind of just kind of like say things, I don't know, like as if they're not holding back as much. And so I feel like that's where a lot of the lyrics came from, like just trying to like say things that might be kind of like I don't know, not so pretty, just say it out loud. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean that makes a lot. Again, thanks for going over that. And that's seriously got to be one of the most like, I don't know what I'm looking for, but terrifying things that can happen just like in a day-to-day occurrence.
Yeah.
Well, I can't fathom dealing with that. That just like I get like claustrophobic, and that just seems like the most claustrophobic moment of your life. You know what I mean? And yet finding a way, again, like you said, it's not like the feeling you can get from that. I'm sure, like you said, you could relate to a lot of different things, and that's good that you're able to relate that in that way, and so make this song not just about this horrific thing that I'm sure, like you said, you've had bandmates that have experienced that. I've had family members that have experienced it, and also like I've seen like a 6-legged thing on the ceiling and they can't move or whatever the case may be, some crazy stuff you hear. And you can still relate that to like a lot of the day-to-day trapped in your head things that people can feel when they are walking about that are very debilitating, right? Like I don't know that there's not somebody that can relate to at least those things that you did. I think you articulated well in the song where you state like the word paralyzed over and over in one aspect of the song, and you could clearly be talking about literally being paralyzed, but also there's so many things that like metaphorically or, symbolically paralyzed people that, like, again, not to beat a dead horse is what I say over and over, but makes it a very relatable thing that while you're talking about a very specific circumstance and issue that you're dealing with. So again, really, really, really interesting song, and cool that you're still find a way to make it relatable. As far as the production and things of that nature go, anything to say for this one, or any little tidbits, Austin or Maddie, with what you went through with the song, production wise, mixing, all that good stuff?
Yeah, this one was kind of a fun one in like the post-recording production and stuff. This was like when I was really getting into interesting plugins and like getting some gear and stuff like that. So it was, as we were like fleshing this one out, I was playing around with a lot of things. This is the one that I had like seen something about Phoebe Bridgers' Punisher album. I was like watching some stuff about like the mixing and that they did with that, and they were talking about one song on their Garden song. It's a very like it sounds really small and big all at the same time. It's like this weird sort of like throbbing instrumentation under like a very simple vocal line, because it's a Phoebe Bridgers song. And the way that they did that was really interesting. They like used a few different things, but primarily a plugin called Lossy from Goodhertz, a company, and they like basically like recorded a whole band and then like just crushed it and compressed it and then ran it through this sort of like bit crusher MP3 artifactor plugin and made the whole thing sound really tinny and small, but still retaining kind of like the drums, the everything else, and then sidechained that to like a kick drum. And so you just get this like really cool sounding thing. So I was like, oh, I want to do that. And so I opened up this song, got like a 30-day free trial of Lossy, and I'm like trying to do it, and it's not working because they had to do a whole lot of other things, like, whatever. So I ended up just I bounced out this like version of the song that's like, or just like the chorus that just sounded like it was being played on like a high school like stadium speaker system, but like 3 blocks away.
Yeah.
Which like I grew up 3 blocks away from my high school, so I would hear like sports stuff and songs, and so I was like, oh, that sounds exactly like that. Ha, that's cool. I dragged the file like to the end of the song or whatever, closed it down for the day, and then like moved on. And then at some point later, I was like doing other stuff. I had like a microphone in the shower, and I was throwing dog toys around in the bathroom to like get all these weird sounds in the song. So I like bounced that and I sent it to Maddie, and I forgot to mute that little track that I had made. And I think you like discovered it, where you were like, what is going on at the end? The song is like still playing at the end. It's like a little like version of the song that's like really quiet that I can hear underneath the outro, but I didn't know what it was. And I was like, oh shit, sorry, let me like fix that or whatever. And they were like, no, keep it. It's so cool. It's really cool. And then we ended up doing that under like each of those like the paralysis parts of the song where we have like the vocalizations and like the slap bass or whatever. So there's like these weird, it doesn't come across quite as like the song, but there's these weird like swelling texture things that are happening in those interludes. And that's because of like an actual accident, because I just didn't mute the track.
I love that when like the happy accidents you can add in, and it's not like a happy accident that somebody like we were talking about earlier that you could like fabricate later and put in and all that you could actually like incorporate that into the music and have it kind of have that that analog like authenticity feel, right? Like that's so cool. I love that.
Never would have tried to do that otherwise. Like that's a great idea. Didn't have it. I did not have that idea.
And that's just one of those moments that like you can't, you just have to love that you have that moment. Like you can't plan it. You can't, there's no way, but like it all works out in the end, and it makes it, that much more unique in a fantastic way. That's really cool. All right, well, going to the very last track here, we've got, hang on, my computer's freezing here for a second. We've got show me the way, right? Again, I'll stop rambling here and saying the same question over and over. Just tell me what the song's about, Maddie, lyrically. Give me anything you can talk about songwriting, you know, what the where this came from as far as the instrumentation goes, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the most fun, straightforward, I don't know, like I don't want to say it's less deep than the other songs, but it's like I tried a little bit less hard. I was kind of like, I wrote this after I had like someone who I had gone on a few dates with like 3 years earlier. And like I was just really excited to run into this person again, and then we like started like dating again after that, and I had like never thought that I was going to see them again. So it was kind of just like a fun experience, and so I was really excited, and so I just wrote this song like in that kind of feeling of excitement. And so the lyrics are very like kind of simple, and it's really like I just like it because it's like a catchy pop song.
Yeah.
I just I'm like really fun to sing and play. And there's even this like section in it that's like I kind of heard this like guitar riff idea in my head that goes like da 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 da. I do a lot of like, because I haven't known how to play guitar for very long, and I don't really have the skills to do anything besides rhythm guitar, and I'm not really that interested in like becoming super proficient at guitar, which is why we have a lead guitarist. But I will like write guitar riffs or just other instrument riffs in my mind, because it's, you know, the same as like writing a vocal melody. And so we would just, when we didn't have a lead guitarist, we would just be like, okay, and then this is the part where it goes like, and then we like, even once we started playing with a guitarist, we like kept that in the song. And so it's kind of this like, it was like this placeholder idea, and then it ended up being like part of the song, which is really funny. And I even like a couple times tried to get like convince Austin to take it out. I was like, maybe we should have like a short version that like doesn't have that in it. Like I think I felt like kind of embarrassed about it, or like, does this really fit?
Nah.
Like it's not really like normal. And then it's just kind of like, you know, just like let it happen. And like I was taking voice lessons like a year or two ago, and I was practicing this song with my voice teacher, and she was like, I want to hear more like from that section, like give me more of like kind of like what story are you trying to tell with that section. And I was kind of like I don't know, I kind of had to like figure it out in real time, because I was like, honestly, it was like a placeholder, and so I didn't really know like what am I trying to communicate with this section. And so I kind of had to realize that it was like, oh, in a way it's like the song has so much of this pent up energy of kind of being like, okay, well, if you want to date me, like I would want to date you, but like I don't know, I'm kind of jaded now, and like I don't really know. And so in a way it's kind of like to me that section feels like it's like this like letting go and being like, maybe we don't need to take everything so seriously. And it's a really fun section to play live and to sing live. So yeah,
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome, because it feels a little bit like the what do they say about musical theater or whatever, where it's like once the words like once you can't use the words enough, you have to start singing. Once you can't sing enough, you have to start dancing or whatever. That's like the theory of why musical theater isn't actually cringe, no matter what you think. But like this sort of thing, it's like you're already singing, but it's like that same sort of thing where it's like you've got the words, right? You've got your verse and you've got your chorus or whatever. But then when those words aren't enough, you just kind of have to go ba-da-da, ba-ba-da-ba-ba. I love that. That's so good. I love that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and it totally works, and it's cool that you take sort of the you know, the like sort of up, I don't know, like the more, like you said, like more pop upbeat song, and you put that at the end of the EP as well. That's got to start the release, right? But I think it's cool to kind of end on that note, and kind of, you know, you've got a lot of very like serious, related, sensitive topics you cover throughout this EP. I think it's cool that you end it sort of on this more like again, not that you're talking about nothing. You're not. You're talking about like a real world experience of like, I don't know, I'm more jaded now, and we're doing, like this sort of like, again, relationship aspect song, but it's cool that you're able to kind of end it with this more like, poppy song and have that part in it, which I think like kind of puts it over the top in a way. So it's funny that you're really talking about like, are we gonna really keep this in? And it like, I think it adds a lot to it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Did that come from like us playing it live? I wonder, like, I've never asked you about the song order of the EP or whatever, but it sounds like how we structure live shows, which is like kind of more like thoughtful, like stuff earlier on, and then just like party songs to close it out.
I mean, that's a really great thought. Like, no, I think that's actually a great like reasoning, like honestly, of like trying to like leave people on a more like energetic or positive note. And that's actually so true that is how we structure our live sets often.
We've learned to. We did not always.
Right.
And then people would just leave crying, and it was too much.
Yeah.
So.
Leave cry.
Yeah, we can't leave them like that. But no, honestly, the reason why I structured the order this way is because it was almost in alphabetical order. Like it was almost like the order that you sent me the songs in, like you sent me the mixes for me to send to mastering, and it was in an order very similar to this, except I think Show Me the Way and the In Between were switched. Obviously, alphabetically, they would be. And I thought that was you trying to hint at me the order that you wanted. And then I realized it was literally just alphabetical. And because at first I was like, whoa, that's not the order that I was going to do. Like, because in my mind, the order was going to be Nowhere, the In Between, because I like that. Like those next to each other. I like Nowhere as an opener. I like the In Between after Nowhere because they're in the same key and like gives some like there's some transitional energy that makes sense. But then I was like, I have no idea what to do after that because like Show Me the Way and No Clarity shouldn't be next to each other. I just like can't imagine that. So then it was actually because of how you sent it over to me before I realized that like you weren't trying to give me some sort of subliminal messaging with that.
No, I was trying to remove myself from that process by being like, it's alphabetical. I have the rest of it is all you.
Yeah.
That is your job. Yeah.
And then I realized I actually liked the order of No Clarity first and then Nowhere. And then the other two, I felt like I could go either way with like whichever one came after that. But I kind of landed where we landed because I liked Nowhere and then the In Between following it. So it was actually another happy accident.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You can only make so many decisions, and then it's
actually,
just
like, yeah,
that is true.
Track listing, even with 4 songs, it almost seems worse than like a 12-track album where like you can like, the middle, whatever, and then just figure out the beginning and the end. I'm being a little jaded there, but you know what I mean. Like that's that it works fantastic, and that means I listen to it the way you listen to it on accident then too. So that's funny.
Yeah.
But again, thanks for going over this entire EP with me. I think it's absolutely fantastic. For everyone listening, it's coming out on Bandcamp and all streaming platforms December 5th, right? So that's Thursday that it's coming out, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So this will be out the same day as the release to kind of, have people like I like to do that.
Yeah, that's
when I
awesome.
can. To kind of, give people it's sort of like the the DVD commentary,
yes. Special features.
Yeah.
So again, of course, like this whole release will be out when this comes out on the recorded side. So I just have thanks again for breaking this down for me. I won't take too much of your time here. After all that, just 2 questions I have for you is just to kind of plug where people can find your band, what you got going on, the general interview things. And then I always play a song at the end. As I said, the EP will be out already. The one thing I do is I make the guest pick the song to play at the end. So if no one's heard your band before and you want them to hear a song from this release, or maybe there's one that, wasn't a single, but it's, it's got a special thing that you want people to hear, all that good stuff. But just kind of plug where people can find you, find your stuff, what's going on, and then pick a song to play at the end.
Wow, cool. Okay. Yeah, so we're called Line, and we are on social media at Line Sounds Like. We are most active on Instagram, but we also have a TikTok and a Facebook. And we also have an email list. So you can join the email list from our website, which is linesoundslike.com. And yeah, we would love to have folks on the email list. I think like in this age, there's a lot of people are like, trying to find a new relationship with social media or trying to find alternatives to social media. So I'm definitely interested in like building up the email list and also, trying to think outside the box for how to stay in touch with people. But we are definitely still very, very on social media. And yeah, we're on all streaming platforms. And so for both the singles that we've released, Nowhere and The In Between, we have music videos for both of those that are on YouTube. And we also have a live version of No Clarity on YouTube. Yeah. What we have going on is we're hoping to play some shows out of state, kind of a mini Midwest tour in the spring to share more of this EP with people who might not have heard it live before. And yeah, I don't know, always working on new things. Like Austin mentioned, we're messing around with demos. I think like feels really exciting to have this momentum now that Austin knows how to mix and has a whole studio set up. And like we both are, excited about production and that kind of stuff. So no promises on anything, but we're just looking forward to like having fun. I think like messing around with new stuff. Yeah. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, so if anybody's looking for any studio work, not only do we have the Making Room EP, but now there is Making Room Studio.
Nice. I like that you named
Austin's
it after
studio.
the release.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was like, I couldn't not. It's like such a good name.
It's a good name for a studio. Yeah, and a good name for an EP. It works out. Yeah.
So that is not online anywhere yet. So it's very exclusive.
Very good. So you got to find Austin
if you can figure
on
out
their
how to
socials
find me
or
on the internet. I'm not gonna. That's gonna be it.
But you want to sleuth though, because you want to work with them.
It'll be worth worth your finding.
And I think anyone that hears this EP will agree with that, and they should find you, and they should pay you money to record their music.
Yes.
Sounds great.
Well, thanks for all that. And again, if you ever do have like any sort of socials or website or anything for that studio too, feel free to send it over to me. I will wholeheartedly annoy people with that link to make sure people come over to you.
I will let you know. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And then again, this is the one thing that I don't make the decision on. Go ahead and pick the song that you want from the EP to play at the end.
I have a thought, but I'm wondering if you have a thought too.
Yeah. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Show me the way.
Hey, there we go.
Oh, that was awesome.
You know how rare it is when
I was nervous. I didn't know what they were going to say.
Whenever I do this and there's more than one person from the band on, it inevitably turns into people like, well, what about that? But what about that one? But what about that one? And then I end up playing a clip at the beginning and the end or something, to appease everybody.
That is kind
but
of.
But all right, no. Show Me the Way is a great one. I think it's a good way for people to kind of hear I always feel like when I'm saying these things, they come off the wrong way, but like the fun side of your band with the release.
Yeah.
And then they can go back, that's a good way. You have them hear the ender and then they got to go listen to the rest of the EP.
Yep.
So that works out great. Again, this has been with Maddie and Austin of Line with their new EP, The Making Room, that'll be out now from the recorded side of this when you hear it. And we're going to hear Show Me the Way from The Making Room on the Powerless Podcast. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
Hey, I wish you know me the same way that you